Okay, everybody, we are starting today with Russian absolutism, which is where we left off with the last one. I have a good crew in the classroom here with me today, Ava, Lindsay, and Ronan, who I'm sure know all about all this stuff. And we just took the practice test for all of you people who didn't show up this morning. We missed you. Let's go there. Hopefully it'll look okay on Zoom as well. Nope, it's not going to. There we go. Okay. Oh, you know what? I still have to change my display settings. Okay, we don't really need to know Ivan IV, so don't worry about it. But just know that they are an absolute monarchy, you know, from very, very early on. And if we look at that at the green sections of the notes here, it says established hierarchies of class, religion, and gender continue to define social status perceptions in rural and urban settings. Okay, you know, when we go through here. But really what we need to focus in on is the Romanov dynasty and how they're going to stay in power up until the end with the great communist revolution with our buddy Vladimir Lenin, of course, in 1917. So just like the other ones, the one we really need to know with absolutism in Russia is Tsar Peter the Great, right? And he's our great example, you know, that we've got of the time frame. A lot of you guys, how many of you did a storybook on this one? Did you guys do Peter? Yeah. Oh, Peter's your storybook guy. So do you remember a lot of him from the storybook? No. Okay, never mind. Ava doesn't remember everyone. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. I'm with you here. Okay. So what do we have to know about him in general? Keep in mind here, just like if we were to compare him to the Western ones, he is going to limit the nobles' power. Okay, because that's kind of the key concept here is you can't have nobles with armies. We can't have nobles with a lot of power. Okay, but the great thing that we have to know about Peter the Great is modernization. So he, along with Catherine, someone who comes pretty much right after him, are going to work to modernize Russia. And he recognizes that Russia had fallen behind the Western Europe. He visited Holland and England. And I know we watched that funny movie about how he destroyed the house in England because they were drinking too much. And didn't he like make a hole out the back end of the house, you know, and where wheelbarrow races, you know, stuff like that. But what he did with this is he also brought back Western culture, but more than anything, he brought back Western technology. Okay. He toured shipyards, examined military equipment, observed Western customs. He met with smart people of the time. I know one of our primary source meetings was about the bishop who was put in charge by the king to meet with Peter and teach him about things that were British. Okay. And so when he returns, he brings back with him specialists in order to teach the Russian people. Now, this modernization is for military might. Don't think, oh, look, he loves Western culture. Okay. No, it really is so that they can compete on the world, you know, the world stage a little bit more of what was going on there. So what do we get here? He creates a standing army trained by foreigners. Okay, he builds himself a navy trained again by foreigners that he has brought in and paid a lot of money. Okay, he starts to draft in a lot of these serfs and the peasants into these armies. It's a horrible life if you're a Russian peasant. We know that already. They have serfdom, okay, which means essentially they're slaves. They're bought and sold. They're tied to the land. If you sell the land, the serfs often come with them. Okay. And they had 25-year enlistments in the army. They used to actually say that if someone was married, that their wife could remarry because these guys were in the army and you presume they're not coming back, right? So that keep in mind here that all of this is done on the backs of the peasants and the serfs. Okay. A lot of this is done. Okay. 75% of the national budget is spent on military by the end of Peter's reign. All right. But he does manage to do it. His great achievement that he loved was St. Petersburg. That is started in 1703, again, built on the bones and the dead bodies of serfs, okay? But it's his window on the west because it was on the Baltic Sea, which means they can get out to trade. Now, the one thing the Russians always kept looking for and wanting is that warm water port. And that is where Catherine the Great is going to come in and get that warm water port, okay, in the Crimean area, because that's the Black Sea and it does not freeze like the Baltic does. Okay, so there you go. Modernization. All right, should we talk about a little bit of war with him? If we want to say anything, he's at war for most of his time, okay? He's often at war with Sweden, all right? And let me move this little thing up here, okay? The Great Northern War lasts 21 years. He defeats the Swedes, gains access to the Baltic area, and I guess we could say the rest is just history, and that's, you know, that's how he gets his St. Petersburg on up there. Oh, and St. Petersburg, by the way, will be the new capital, okay? Up until the point that the communists take over again, where they make Moscow the capital the second time around. All right. If we were to compare or think about him this way, just keep in mind here, he rules by decree, okay? Just like Louis XIV does. One thing he did do is he made all of the boyars, which are the nobles, made them dress in a Western way, okay? And he made them cut their beards, you know, and do all that stuff. Okay, other things. Well, he introduces the potato. He makes, I know it says he allowed here, but he made the Russian women dress in Western clothes as well, which means they would appear in public without veils. Okay, the boyars, the old nobility, they were not very happy about a lot of these changes, especially when he orders them to shave their beards. Okay, they have to build townhouses in St. Petersburg, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so what is he? He's an example how a powerful, energetic autocrat could change a nation. He transformed Europe into a European power. But again, at the expense of the serfs. The serfs are exploited. They become estranged from Russian society. And you have greater disparities between the nobles and the peasants, of course. And Catherine the Great is going to continue this. If you were to take a 20th century modernizer, someone who changes it again and makes them modernized, who would that be, you guys? How about Stalin? Okay, with his 5-year plans, right? All right. Okay, let's do some comparison, because you know we have to compare things. All right. Struggle for sovereignty among state resulted in varying degrees of political centralization. Okay. We get the concept of a sovereign state and secular legal system that comes into play. And by the way, we're in the 1700s now, is where we kind of are. All right. There we still have the competition between the monarchs, the nobles, and the other various groups. All right, about different distributions of governmental authority. And if you were to look at Europe alone, England is a great example of how they're not absolutist anymore after the Glorious Revolution, and they will retain that power of Parliament, and Parliament's power will only get more and more and more and increase as time goes on. So the nobles are also going to challenge the monarch's desire for power, okay, and they want to retain their traditional forms of shared governance and regional autonomy. I think that ship has sailed. What do you guys think? I think so. Okay. And minority, local, and regional identities based on language culture are going to be resistant against the dominant national group. And again, we're going to look at this in the 1800s and call that, what are we going to call that? Nationalism. Nationalism. There we go. Other political key things that we should know about 17th and 18th century. We have that balance of power thing that's going on, and we want to make sure that we acknowledge that this is going to be an issue going forward from here on out. Okay. So it also, political sovereignty is going to affect relationships amongst the states and the individuals. Much of Europe is absolutist, okay, over the course of the 17th and 18th century. But we do have 3 countries that challenge it. What 3 countries do we have that challenge absolutism? Go with the easy one first. Britain?
Isn't that Austria-Hungary?
Nope. These next 2 are hard. The Dutch. Everybody forgets about the Dutch, but remember, they don't really even have a king. The last one's Poland, okay? But Poland didn't really work out because they keep exploding the diet going in there. Okay, let's move on. Let's go on to the scientific revolution and kind of talk about what's going on in the world. So if we were to go back before our buddy Copernicus comes on the scene, they believed in geocentrism. That is the old view of the universe where the earth is the center. And this really comes from the Greeks. And it kind of makes sense if you think about it, because remember the Renaissance are all like, oh, the Greeks and the Romans, we love them so much. Okay. Aristotle and Ptolemy supported this theory. All right. Secondly, religious institutions are going to jump on this theory and kind of put it into Christianity. Like, oh, beyond the crystal spheres of which they have all of these things going around the earth is God, okay? You know, with it. And it all goes to hell in a handbasket, as my dad used to say, with Nicholas Copernicus. By the way, look at his dates. He is Renaissance, isn't he? Okay. He's a Polish clergyman who goes out every night and actually stares at the stars. Okay. And if you're going to say anything about him, this guy is going to come up with the heliocentric idea that the earth revolves around the sun. Okay. Let's step back one step here and let's actually look at the scientific world and the medieval world that they were in before. Okay. Number one, you guys all know this. Society is governed by church views and traditions and practices, right? They're superstitious and they believe in magic. And if they believe in magic, they also believe in witches, okay? And they're based on medieval ideas like Aristotle's and ancient Greek and Roman, okay? Basically in there. Okay, all right. If we were to look at causes, if we were to look at causation of this, well, we have medieval universities that are going to start to study mathematics, astronomy, and physics. By the way, science is called natural philosophy. Do you guys remember that from the notes a long time ago? The natural philosophy. Okay, so if you're looking for science, that's what it would be. And the Renaissance, with all of the stimulated science and rediscovering of ancient mathematics, solving of navigational problems to get to the new world, is going to really, you know what it is they start to be innovative. And once you're innovative, you're going to figure things out. Okay, stuff like barometer, thermometer, pendulum, astrolabe. I don't think that's on our little notes that we're looking at here, but all of these are going to be in there. And then we have the scientific method that is going to be formalized the way that you can prove something true or false, you know, going through there. Okay, and with it. Okay, all right. So Copernicus. By the way, do you guys remember who Copernicus like dedicated his book to? Just for fun. He dedicated it to the Pope, okay? And he doesn't have it published till the year he dies. This guy had it figured out. He knew that this was going to upset the church, is the only thing I can think of it. All right. At first, the Catholic Church kind of ignores it. They're like, yeah, whatever. Okay, right? But then as more and more people read it, by 1616, they decide they're going to jump in and make a very bad decision that Catholic Church sometimes does and decide that this is a false idea and persecute anyone who jumps on with it. Okay, now we had a whole bunch of guys in between here. We had Tycho Brahe and we had Kepler. I don't think you need to know them. If you're going to waste your brain power, go straight to Galileo, because we just want to do the big ones, right? So the second guy would be Galileo. And Galileo is important because he dabbles in all sorts of things. And keep in mind here, he is staunchly Catholic, okay? He is in Rome, and he actually goes under the Roman Inquisition at some point. All right, he uses a telescope and improves the telescope for astronomical observations. He proves that the heliocentric theory is absolutely positively true, okay, with mathematical formulas, all right? But the Pope is going to accuse Galileo of meddling with the church's authority, okay? And he summons him into Rome, into the Roman Inquisition for trial. And Galileo, because he doesn't want to die and be burned, okay, he retracts his support for Copernicus. All right. So he is persecuted for his ideas. Okay. Other things Galileo did, just because we're talking about it. Do you guys remember he did inertia? He dropped things off at the top of the, right? You know, to see how fast they'd fall. You know, he really, I would consider him a true scientist. He's curious about a lot of things, you know, in there. Who's the next big one that we're doing? The big, big, big one. Isaac Newton, you got it. Isaac Newton is, so remember, Isaac Newton says, I am only great because I stood on the shoulders of the men before me. Okay, like I would have never figured this out if it hadn't been for Galileo and Copernicus and all this other stuff. But his basic law is the law of gravitation, and you know, like I'm great because I stood on the shoulders of giants. That's his quote. But along with coming up with calculus, okay, he incorporates astronomy of Kepler and Copernicus. But the basic thing with the idea of law of the gravitation here is he says, you guys are all talking about the same thing. When the earth goes around the sun, that's gravity. When the moon goes around the earth, that's gravity. When I drop things, that's gravity. Okay, so that's really what he does. He combines all of these things together into the universal law of gravitation. Now, this is going to be groundbreaking because you start to get the idea that natural laws are unchangeable and predictable. Things don't just happen randomly. And God's active participation in the natural world is not needed because the world will exist and continue on with natural laws on its own. Okay? This is going to lead to the foundation of that idea of deism, that distant God. So think about it this way. Newton demonstrates the universe is governed by natural universal laws expressed in mathematical formulas. He views the universe as a big machine, created by God, put into motion by God, and then God steps back from it. Supernatural forces play no active role. And by the way, they used Newtonian physics up until like, I don't know, probably Einstein. Okay, in there as well. Okay, let's go through some fast ones. Bacon and Descartes, stick them together and just know that they came up with a scientific method. You guys all know what the scientific method is, so I'm not going to worry about that. You know, hypothesis, test it, you know, that whole thing. Okay, other than that, you don't need to know much more about them, but just make sure you know the scientific method is a thing, and Bacon and Descartes are the two guys who kind of come up with it. And empiricism is one of those words. I just want to make sure you guys know empiricism is like, if you see that, just think science, okay? Because it's not a word that we typically, you know, would use today for anything else. Okay, where does this go? Well, first of all, you get this becomes super popular, all this science. Newton is buried in Westminster Abbey, you guys, okay? He's got a big monument, and you get scientific societies where, scientific societies where they would promote research, and then they would like publish what they found out. And they also were competing against each other. So Louis XIV would be a patron of the Paris Scientific Society, and that means he's paying for the research, right? You know, so we have this little bit of this like, oh, France wants to figure out things before England, you know, that sort of thing. Let's go to religion. Catholic theologians don't really leave very much room for innovation, okay, in general. But you know what? We know, and you guys did a DBQ on that. Remember that one? The Jesuits, you guys, are always like kind of ignoring the Catholic Church's stance and experimenting on their own. So I guess you could say it this way. This is your DBQ in a nutshell, right? The official stance of the church was that this was not a thing, but the unofficial stance, according to many priests, was, it is, okay? You know, so there you go. All right. Some Protestant theologians are also rigid as well. Overall, they were a little more liberal with their scientific discoveries. Okay, so like Galileo, his book is going to be, like publishings are going to be put on the index of forbidden books. You guys get the idea here, okay? All right, now, here's the other part I need you guys to realize is that even though all of these scientists are experimenting and figuring things out, go to the next page in alchemy and astrology. Do you guys see that? A lot of these scientists were still kind of dealing with supernatural forces just for fun, like alchemy, okay? And so So these guys still, like, alchemy and astrology still appealed to some very smart, educated individuals that you would think would not actually want to dabble in this, okay? So alchemy, if you look at it, this is a definition here. It's a medieval forerunner of modern chemistry, as it was, you were supposed to be able to transform matter, okay, into another matter. So you could take like a base metal and turn it into gold, is what they thought. By the way, obviously you cannot do that, okay?
Actually, they found it a way to, but it's so much energy and such, like, I don't know, it's small molecular.
Okay, Ronan is now telling us, if you guys didn't hear that, that actually they figured out how to do this, okay? but it costs so much, it's not worth it. All right. So just keep in mind here, like a lot of these absolute monarchs are patronizing these scientific societies, and they have an astrologer, okay, to tell them when to do things. All right, and magic, particularly with the lower classes, like the uneducated, magic is still going to be a thing, okay? But what we do get out of the scientific revolution is witch trials go down dramatically, okay? The Enlightenment and the scientific revolution are going to kill the idea that Ava is causing a horse to go insane and kill Ronan. That's the best I could come up with. All right, let's go back one and back a page, and let's do some let's do medicine, okay? Part of the scientific revolution is also going to have to do with medicine, all right? Okay, they were using this guy Gallens, who lived 129 to 210. That's a long life. That's like 90 years. Who believed that disease was an imbalance of the 4 separate body humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. So when someone gets sick, they used to bleed them. You guys, they bled George Washington till he died. I mean, he was going to die anyways, let's face it. But it doesn't help when you like keep taking blood out of him over and over and over again. Okay, so we have here is challenges to Gallen's theories. One of them is Harvey, who figures out that the heart is a pump and blood circulates. Vesalius is so they also had the anatomy wrong, and Vesalius is going to dissect and study cadavers. Okay, and Paracelsus is the father of toxicology. He is one that is kind of like our first drug dealer, ha ha ha, okay, coming up with drugs, and sees medical issues sometimes as chemical imbalances, okay? So, so kind of keep that in mind as well. Okay, all righty. Just make sure you know governments and monarchs encourage the scientific inquiry, okay? It's a competition between them. They like to talk to each other internationally, just like scientists do today. One more thing I want to add in here on the scientific revolution. The agricultural revolution also is part of the scientific revolution, because they were using scientific method to figure out how to make more food, okay? Crop rotation. And I know that we talked about that in the last one, but crop rotation and the breeding of animals to make them larger, right? The seed drill, all of that could go in there as well. Okay, good. Let's do the Enlightenment. All right, the Enlightenment, keywords: empiricism, skepticism. That's why that one was right there. You guys, that's why it was that one on, is that on that question I got wrong? Yeah. Sorry, I missed one today on the practice test, and I'm still really mad about it. Okay, human reason, rationalism, reason, rationalism. You guys, oh, optimism, remember that one? Okay. All of these are kind of, progress, that man can progress, okay? These are all ideas that are going to come out of this, all right? What they want to do is add or apply the principles of the scientific revolution to society and human institutions. And if we want to say one thing about it, the guy who kind of starts it, it's going to be John Locke. Okay. All right. So stop for a minute and let's go back and let's look at where this is coming from. If we were to say causation, it clearly comes out of the scientific revolution, right, guys? Okay, it does. And the secular worldview that you're going to get for the first time in human history. Okay, this idea of a faraway God, a deist idea as well. Okay. Man's intellect is apart from God. They have faith in human reason rather than faith in revelation. And deism. Make sure you know that's the religious art of it. God is a cosmic clockmaker. He created the universe, then he stepped back and put it into motion. Okay, the universe is governed by natural laws, not by a personal God. Okay, and this is a big part of this. Okay, let's go on to our main guys that we need to know. Obviously, we talked about John Locke before. John Locke did two things: the two treatise on government, which he says, which is the justification for the glorious revolution, and in 1688, and he says, let me see if I have that on here. No, I don't. Where he says, if a government violates your natural rights, anybody remember what the natural rights are? Life, liberty, and property. Okay, life, liberty, and property, then you have the right to revolt. Again, they kick out James II. But he also comes up with this essay concerning human understanding. And this is the whole idea that you are a blank slate when you come out of your mother's womb and life writes on it. Okay, you know, so it's a really, what it is a stressing of education, and it's essential education. You're going to find out that these philosophes that we're going to talk about, really, they are going to talk a lot about educating people and how education can change the world. Okay, so the philosophes. Well, this is the group of writers and thinkers who create these Enlightenment ideas. They really wanted to look at real societal problems of the time. And when you think about where they are, they're in France, by the way, and France has absolutism, they have censorship, they have a lot of problems here, and that they live in intolerant absolute societies. The big one is going to be Voltaire, and he goes after the church, okay? For all of the attacks and the inquisitions and lack of religious tolerance that they have had, okay? In general, he also is for free speech. He's tossed in jail a couple times. He leaves, goes to Switzerland, keeps writing. By the way, his name's not really Voltaire, okay? That's his pen name. So a big one with him, of course, is religious toleration. Now, Voltaire's kind of interesting because one of the things that he advocated, like governmental wise, he admired Britain, but he didn't really think it was very practical, like the whole idea of parliament. Okay. So what he really advocated for, he would say stuff like, it's the best we can hope for, is enlightened monarchs. Okay. Or enlightened despotism, which we'll have a little bit later on. Okay, good. Let's go to our next guy. Well, I've got Diderot next. Sorry, in the notes, we don't have Diderot next. Diderot is going to spread the ideas of the Enlightenment with his encyclopedia, which he wanted to compile all knowledge of time, current science, technology, mathematics, government ideas. And if you took the practice test today, there's actually a page from his encyclopedia of making needles, I think, right? Okay, so things have to be examined, debated, investigated, and it really helps spread the ideas of the Enlightenment. Now, what does it do? It undermines established authority by including controversial articles like religion and politics. Ooh, and sex. Shh, don't tell anyone. These are all banned in France, by the way, but don't worry. You can get them in the Netherlands, and then they just bring them over the border and sell them for a lot of money. Okay? Okay. Baron de Montesquieu. Well, he's a noble. Point of view, he wants power. Okay? So he believed, of course, in the separation of powers. All right, he wants 3 branches of government that have checks and balances towards them, and great influence of the American Constitution. Next one, Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Oh, Rousseau. We women, we don't really love Rousseau that much because we read a little bit too much Rousseau in this class, right? Okay, Rousseau. Number one, I'm going to go to the next one. Let's do social contract first. Okay, so John Locke and Thomas Hobbes had the contract with the government. They call it the social contract. He's going to revise it for the last time, okay? And he's going to take Locke's ideas and change it a little bit more, okay? Hobbes and Locke say individuals enter into a contract with their rulers. Now, Hobbes says once you enter into it, you can't break away from it. Locke says if the government violates your natural rights, then you can what? Revolt. Rousseau says individuals enter into a contract with each other. And this is known as the general will. I'll be honest, you guys, on the AP test, just if you're looking for an answer that you want to be Rousseau or something about Rousseau, just pick general will, okay? I mean, they'll have that word up there, okay? So sovereign power, according to him, does not lie in a ruler. It lies with the people instead, and that's the general will. Any action that is right and good for all. Now, what's funny is later on, people are going to take general will and use it for like forcing our will on others, okay? That sort of thing, okay? So it is like minority downs, other points don't really matter, you know, in there. So dictators are going to justify their rule through general will, okay? But we know that he is a great influence also on the American and French Revolution later on. Okay, good. And Rousseau. He writes a book on education and how natural education should replace the rigid schooling, even though he had 7 children of his own and sent them all off to orphanages and didn't take care of them. Okay, so here he also believes in the differences of girls and boys, and women have different mental skills than the men, you know, that whole thing in there. All right. There you go. So learning by doing is kind of his idea on there. Okay. Doesn't really think very much of our female intellect, though. I'm a little upset about that one. Okay. All right. We did deism again, but deism is the cosmic clockmaker. God created the universe, stepped back, let it run. Okay. Much of the educated elite in Western Europe and America were deists. So Montesquieu, Voltaire, and Rousseau, and I'm just going to add one in there. Thomas Jefferson was too. Okay. So even what we would consider the American, I think Ben Franklin was as well. Okay. Like our founding fathers were often deists as well. Now, on the other side of this, you're going to always have a backlash. So then you're going to have pietism, which is going to stress faith and emotion and religion. And that kind of becomes really popular in the German Protestant states. Ooh, you know what we get for the first time? We get atheism. I don't think it's the first time, but you know what I mean? Like the guys who are really putting it out there. And so Diderot and Baron de Halbach said, there's no God, okay? But the main thing we want to talk about here is the whole idea that like one of the main ideas is religious toleration, and that religion is not a public matter, but a private matter. Okay, with it. Okay, women. Do we have Mary Wollstonecraft in here? We do. Turn one more page over. Okay, most philosophers, believed in liberty and equality should be extended to women. Okay, I'm going to say some. I don't want to say most. Okay, they say women should have access to education and intellectual life, and some of them even support political equality. Okay, not Rousseau, people, not Rousseau. Rousseau makes the distinction of the public sphere dominated by men and the private sphere by women. Okay, natural. So women should concentrate their natural talents on the domestic sphere and keep doing laundry. That's why I got a washing machine in which I push a button. Okay, the two people who support the rights of women are Mary Wollstonecraft and the Marquis de Condorcet. Okay, they believe women should be out. And oh, by the way, one of Mary Wollstonecraft, doesn't she say it's education? We need the same education as men if we want to be able to compete with the men on the stage. All right, good. Also, salon movement. Women are involved in the salon movement as well, and kind of spreading the ideas of the Enlightenment along in that way as well. Okay, let's go new economics. You guys know mercantilism is like this very rigid kind of system. So what we start to get is new theories that are going to challenge mercantilism, and those are free market theories, okay? The idea of free trade and a free market. It starts off with agrarians, okay? So it's like the physiocrats with Francois Quesnay. They're going to say economic activity should be free from artificial restrictions, okay? All right. And they came up with this idea of a laissez-faire policy, but by the way, they were only talking about like agriculture, all right? So that's kind of where they are. But the big guy who puts it on everybody is going to be Adam Smith, the Scottish dude. Okay, he writes The Wealth of Nations, and what he did is he comes up with the ideas of laissez-faire. Okay, he has a couple rules for laissez-faire. Number one, the law of supply and demand. Okay, so if supply is high and demand is low, what will happen to the price automatically? It's going to go down. Exactly. And if supply is low and demand is high, the prices go up. Okay. Have you guys noticed gas prices are going up? Are you guys driving yet? So you have not noticed because you don't have to buy gas. And you probably have not noticed because you don't have to buy your own gas. I noticed because I have to pay for everybody's gas. Okay. All right. So here's the ideas of the Wealth of Nations. Don't interfere with a free functioning market. Okay. The government's role should only be defending the state against invasion, protecting property, and enforcing contracts. The law of supply and demand and the law of self-interest are like really important, because self-interest will drive people, okay, to work harder and produce stuff. Okay. Oh, the invisible hand. The invisible hand is what deals with the prices going up and down, right? Okay, competition is good. The law of competition that will make better quality and lower prices. Okay, and no more tariffs. Tariffs need to be abolished. Okay, there you go. Now, comparisons. Colbert is our mercantilist, right? So mercantilist policies were best to increase French power and wealth. Whereas Adam Smith says, let's just go down here. France should have a favorable balance of trade, and this is going to include high tariffs, okay? So sugar plantations, slave trade, encourage Canadian colonies, okay? Whereas Adam Smith is going to say governments need to stop regulating policies like tariffs and monopolies, and the Navigation Acts need to go. And instead, we need free trade, minimal government interference, and we need self-interested individuals in a free market, and they will produce wealth for the country. Ooh, and then you can tax them. Bonus. I think with economics, if you guys get an essay, I think it's going to be continuity change over time. Like kind of capitalism's always there, but then we go into mercantilism, and then we go into the free market system, and then you go into Keynesian, right? Where the government needs to intervene in extreme ideas. Just putting that out there. Okay. Okay, so how do we spread the Enlightenment? Well, salons are organized by women in private homes. We had coffee houses where the people would go and discuss all of the issues of the day. Come on in. Academies are going to serve the king and public education. Okay, lending libraries are a thing, and this is in the late 1700s. They start to set up libraries, which again coincides, of course, with the literacy rate going up. Okay, and Masonic lodges, I don't really care. I mean, free thinkers, Masons, whatever. Okay, all right. How are we doing, guys? Let's finish this up. Enlightened despots. Okay. Let's go in here. Number one, Catherine the Great. Let's go to the right page. Keep going. I forgot about Olympia de Jours as another one that you could use her as an example for a woman in the Enlightenment and women's rights. Don't forget, she gets her head cut off in the French Revolution. And so she's the Declaration of Women and the Female Citizen in 1791. and Madame Laforge kills her. Mrs. McKegney did not hear that.
I did. She got her head cut off.
Okay,
Decapitation.
she's guillotined, which we enjoy in this class. I'm sorry, we just do. We're big fans of the guillotine. Okay. All right. Okay. Let's talk about impact of the Enlightenment on society. If we think about it, okay, secular world, enlightened despotism, American and French revolutions. Okay. So the educational reform, the growth of literacy, and the growth of laissez-faire capitalism, which is going to be our classical liberalism that's going to come back later on. Okay. So who are these enlightened despotisms? These are absolute monarchs who believe in the ideas, or some of them, or at least like one of them, of the Enlightenment. The worst of the bunch is Catherine the Great. If anything, I would stick Catherine in there with Peter the Great as a reformer and a modernizer, okay? But she gets tossed in because she actually invited Voltaire and Diderot to her court, and she had the first printing press. Okay, this is all she does. You ready? Restricted torture practices and limited religious toleration of Jews. Whoa, way to go. Other than that, she made serfdom worse, and I think she's a horrible, terrible despot. Oh, and she killed her husband, which is kind of fun, and took over. Do you guys remember who the best one is? Oh, other things Catherine did that are really fun. She took part of Poland and made them part of the Russian Empire. Okay. Okay, so that's territorial expansion. And she also gains control the warm water port that they want in the Crimean area. Okay, good. Frederick the Great. You know what? I'm giving Catherine the Great what are we gonna give her? A D- on being enlightened at best. Like, doesn't she like take the Cossacks and go after like all of these guys and kill them? Okay, all right. Frederick the Great, what are we gonna give him? I'm gonna give him a B-. What do you think? Okay. He considered himself the first servant of the state. He invited Voltaire to live in his palace as well. Okay. Supports scientific agriculture. Okay. So unified in national law, abolish the use of torture except for treason and murder. I like how they have like asterisks. Well, we're not going to torture you unless it's treason or we think you murdered somebody. Okay. And he allows the Huguenots to come in and the Jews to immigrate into Prussia. Okay, now he actually ends serfdom on his own lands, but he only wants to make the Junkers, okay, who are the nobles, happy. So he does not make them abolish serfdom.
I think the acronym for the Enlightened monarchs is TRAP, right? Like, what was it?
I think it is. What does it mean though?
Toleration.
Toleration, religion, absolutism. What's P? Left to political reform, maybe? Political reform would be the unified law codes that come out of this. Frederick the Great had a bitchin' army, and he used it. He takes part of Poland. He takes part of Austria. That's when Maria Theresa becomes a queen. Okay, his dad made the army and he used it. Okay. Oh, he allowed religious freedom, of course, and promotes education in schools. Prussia is the first one with a public school system for elementary on there. All right, I got some comparisons. Peter the Great, Frederick the Great. All right, the best. I'm giving him an A-. He would get an A+, except he died. Okay, I mean, we can't all, whatever. But Joseph II of Austria is going to be the best of our enlightened monarchs. I mean, really, like the best. Okay, he abolishes serfdom. No more feudal dues, no more robot. Remember, the robot is mandatory work, okay? Religious toleration for Christian and Jews, reduces church influence, reforms the judicial system, abolishes torture, ends the death penalty. There's a lot of problems with this. The problem, for the most part, with the serfdom is then he made the serfs buy the land. It's the same thing in Russia, and they can't afford to buy the land, so then they're super mad. Okay, so there are a lot of things. Anyways, when he dies, his brother kind of scales back a lot of these reforms. Okay, especially the serfdom one. All right, causation. Let's look about causation. So if we have to write something with this cause this, let's look at the Enlightenment in general, right? We got to go back to the scientific revolution with it, right? And so you can go all the way back and look at the scientific revolution, of course, starts essentially with Copernicus in the Renaissance and the rediscovering of the works of the ancient Greek and Romans. Observations of the natural world are going to change many Europeans' views of the world, okay? New ideas of science based on observation, experimentation, mathematics are going to challenge these classical views of the cosmos, nature, and human body. Okay, we know that existing traditions of knowledge in the universe still persisted. They still believe in alchemy and they still believe in astrology. All right. And in a nutshell, they're going to challenge the prevailing patterns of thought with regard to social order, governmental institutions, and the role of religion. And it will be a direct cause of the French Revolution. That's it for today. Da, da, da.
Except that I just got the best thing that came up on my Facebook feed from 5 years ago that I'm now going to share with you.
Okay, let me turn off the